Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to today's session, which is around how we can future-proof our talent pipeline. An increasing issue, something that's getting more and more serious every year as it goes on. And we've been lucky enough today to get an excellent panel who we'll introduce shortly together to discuss this issue. A couple of housekeeping things first. As you can see, the session's being recorded. If you want a copy of the recording, just email us at sales@PharmiWeb.com and we'll get that over to you. Also, there is a chat function. So if you have any questions, any comments, you want to share some experiences, pop it into the chat and I'll then be able to ask the panelists later in the session. We're looking to run at about half an hour today, but if anyone needs to stay later for any reason and ask a few more questions, we'll see what we've got available. With that in mind, that's everything. So Vince, I'll hand over to you to get started.
Lovely, thanks Simon. So welcome everybody. We've already covered all the housekeeping, so I'm going to run through just a couple of slides as a way of introduction and let the panelists introduce themselves to you. And then we'll get straight into questions and hopefully we'll answer any questions that come from the audience at the end of the session. So enjoy. So first of all, just from a housekeeping point of view, I'll be running the session. It's standard sort of question time type setup where we'll ask questions to the audience at the end. Simon will MC the meeting. We'll also take any questions that you've got while you're putting those questions in the chat, and there'll be an open forum at the end again, which Simon will run. So introducing people. Michelle, would you like to give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Thank you. Hello everybody, my name is Michelle Cloney. I am the Chief People Officer at Warrington and Halton Teaching Hospitals. I have worked in the NHS for for 40 years this year, initially starting in nursing and then moving into education and then into HR and organisational development. I'm clearly passionate about creating the conditions for people to be happy at work and have a sense of belonging in the workplace. And I'm also at this time the Vice President of the Northwest branch of the HPMA. So thank you very much for the invitation and I look forward to participating today.
Lovely, thanks Michelle. Sue, an introduction for you if we may.
Hi, I'm Sue Fitzpatrick. I'm the former Director and Head of Education and Training at the Institute of Clinical Research. I am very passionate about bringing in new people into the clinical research arena. I've got, like Michelle, over 40 years in clinical research. I still try and get involved in bringing people on by teaching in Queen Mary's University in London. I'm also an external examiner or consultant for NHSE and their apprenticeships. I represent the Clinical and Contract Research Organisation, CCRA, on UCROF, which is the European CRO Federation. And we have a task force that we're looking into sort of talent engagement and workforce development. I am a hospital governor at Warrington Hospital and Halton Hospital as well, and also sit on the HRA ethics committee. So it keeps me straight on the straight and narrow as well. And as you can tell, I am Welsh. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, moving on. Lara, a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm by background a historian of medicine. That's what I trained in. And a few years ago, I wrote a book on the history of monoclonal antibodies. And in the course of that work, I realized how few of the public understand the latest developments in biomedical science. And so I set up a website called whatisbiotechnology.org that I got seed funding for from the MRC. And that has been running now for just over 10 years and gets over 2 million page views. And a lot of the people who come to that are actually students from schools and universities. And in the course of running that website, I have become very aware of how little students, when they leave school, know about biomedical science and the industry. Most of them are very aware of medicine and university degrees, but don't know the whole vista of different opportunities in the biotechnology industry. And I must admit, as a historian, I've been fascinated with the developments, and I myself have learned an enormous amount, which I would like to pass on to students and get them inspired to think about a career in the industry.
Lovely, thanks, Laura. Okay, and moving on to Bhuta. A little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Bhuta Singh. I'm the responsible officer for NHS England's endpoint assessment service for several national education programs at masters and undergraduate levels, some at lower levels. We look after apprenticeships and other training routes into the NHS. By background, I've got 20 years or 25 years now experience in educational leadership assessment and curriculum development. That's where my background is. And I've been working on a number of programs to develop trailblazers and apprenticeship routes into applied programs. And I sit on several government committees that look after applied programs and apprenticeships.
Lovely, thanks, Bhuta. And then Alexander, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. So my name is Alexandre Malouvier. I'm a Senior Director of Scientific Affairs and Digital Innovation at Icon PLC. My background is a PhD in physiology. I studied gravitational physiology at NASA, was selected as an astronaut. The flight got cancelled, so I had to find a new path. And that's when I joined the pharmaceutical industry. And but it was fairly easy for me. But I realized then 25 years ago that lots of people with scientific backgrounds like me weren't aware of the opportunities to work in clinical research where they could make very nice career, and that started my interest. I've helped more than 300 persons, which I call my Padawans, to join the industry. And then I made this more industrial. So I teach at the University of Paris-Cité, clinical research, and I created in the French Associations of CRO working group on careers in clinical research, which and I'm part of Sue's task force at Futureproof. So I have a keen interest in trying to bridge the biology space with the clinical research. And
Lovely.
Obviously with my accent, I'm French.
Lovely, thanks, Andrew. So that's our panel. I would like to start the session with a very basic statement. I myself have been in recruitment in the industry for nearly 30 years now. My biggest concern for pharma and life sciences as a whole is the fact that we do not have any representation at any universities or any schools or bringing people into the industry. And I think, unfortunately, the industry is starting to let themselves down because we're going to soon run out of people. All the baby boomers will start to retire within the next 14 months. And who's going to replace those people? Who's going to mentor the people coming up? There's a whole range of gender issues that we've got to address as well. So I think we've got a really interesting panel here that are passionate about early years and are actually really good at it from the conversations I've had with them so far. So I have a number of questions I'm going to ask them, and then we'll see where this takes us. Okay, so to kick off, Sue, I'm going to ask you first of all. You've been involved in bringing on new talent and training them for many years. What's your assessment of the current situation?
Well, I think we've had anecdotal evidence that we've had an issue or a problem for many years. I know that Vince and myself have been talking about this for 10, 15 years or even more. There is a shortage of clinical research professionals with the right skills. There's nobody coming in, and I think it's manifested itself now in the workforce, or should I say the lack of workforce, because I think everyone is now in agreement there just isn't enough resource people to actually conduct research in various countries. It's not a UK problem, it is a problem worldwide. And as a member of CCRA, as I say, I joined the UCROF task force, the European CRO Federation task force. And one of the first things we wanted to do is try and characterize the problem. We've had anecdotal evidence, but we needed something, you know, to sort of hang all our sort of ideas on, if you like, and have a greater understanding of what's really happening. So the first thing we did when we sort of set about trying to characterize things was to do a survey. So we sent a survey out to the 28 countries that are part of the UCROF, and most of them are SME CROs, and we were trying to not only categorize it, but try and find the root cause of the problem. So what did we find? First of all, there was a lack of knowledge of clinical research in the general population, especially the young school age. They didn't know sort of anything about it really. And I was secretly disappointed by this because, of course, I thought that we could pin this on to maybe COVID with the development of the vaccines, etc. To me, we missed a golden opportunity to maybe enlighten people about clinical research as a career move, if you like. There was a lack of experience. We can't get people to gain experience to join the industry. There's a lack of staff on the market, which was what caused makes us think about it even more. We found there is an unwillingness from sponsors to use junior staff and also an unwillingness to allow on-the-job training. And this is what is kind of hampering sort of getting new people into the industry. There's also a perceived bad work-life balance, especially when it comes to CRA, clinical research associate roles. So we kind of thought about what our actions could be, and our first step was to increase awareness of sort of what's happening really, hence why we're here today. And we've been trying to get LinkedIn groups and trying to think of different ways of getting people involved. We've always had sort of links with universities. We've always tried to sort of engage with people, but I think it's more important that we do it now and in the right way. Also, we wanted to collaborate with as many people as we can, because the more we talk about it, the more we can increase awareness, the more chance we've got of being able to do something about it, if you like. What we did was come up with a wish list of what we'd like to do. Now, whether we could ever fulfill this wish list, we're not really sure, but we're working towards it. On our wish list is, we would like to agree a realistic minimum experience profile, but built on competence, not on years of experience. Because I think we're all aware of this need for 2 years experience before anyone will give anyone a job. So why not base it on competence rather than experience? I mean, I've known people that have stood by a sort of photocopier for a year and suddenly they've got a year's experience in clinical research. To me, it's a bit perverse. The other thing I'd like to do is have an agreement on acceptable on-the-job training, how we can do it, how we can best achieve that, and possibly acknowledge a defined programme as sufficient. You know, a bit like the Trans-Accelerate GCP courses, where, you know, everyone is in agreement. If you've got a certificate in GCP that's accredited by Trans-Accelerate, it's a move to sort of standardisation of training, if you like. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my assessment of what's happening in the industry. I'm sure that the others have different points of view. Mine's very sort of selfish, if you like, but it's selfish for other people, as in getting new people into the industry, not selfish from my perspective. So thank you for that, Vince. I hope that kind of answers your question.
It certainly does, yeah. Can't stop you when you start, can I?
No, I know,
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
Okay, Alex, just moving over to you very quickly. You're based in France and you have very good visibility of the international market, especially the organisation that you're working for. Is the resourcing problem the same in different countries? How broad do you think it is?
It's more or less the same, and it's totally international. The US have the same problem. So wherever we look at, we see the same things, and probably with the same root causes. And we need to understand it's not only a problem with us clinical researchers in the industry, CROs, pharmas, and biotechs. The situation is a lot worse in the hospitals, which is really a problem, because if we don't have enough staff on the hospitals doing clinical research, we cannot run our trials. So we do have a global problem that, as Sue mentioned, that has multiple causes. I think that people are not aware. There is a lack of awareness of our job, so people don't know what clinical research is. We also discovered in France that some people with degrees in life science felt that they weren't capable of doing clinical research. So when you have a PhD or a postdoc, you are more than equipped to be to become a CRA, and they weren't aware of that. So there are multiple causes, and again, yeah, there is that 2-year experience that's needed. So how do you gain experience if we don't hire you and we don't train you, which is sort of of the problem. But yes, the problem is international. It's affecting all the players in clinical research, and we do hope, and I don't think we have a hope here, we have no choice, probably automation, artificial intelligence will solve part of the problem, but not all of the problem.
Lovely. Thanks, Alexander. Appreciate that. And I completely agree, in actual fact. Which leads me nicely on to Laura, because Laura's one of the few people I've met recently that completely inspired me to rethink where we actually start. And I suppose my question for you, Laura, is what inspired you to set up Future Biotechnologists, and what's the mission? What's the plan?
Thank you so much, Vincent. Well, I started off thinking about students in schools because a lot of them are now coming to my site, What is Biotechnology? And as a result of that, I've decided to set up a new venture, new educational initiative called Future Biotechnologists. And the reason I did that is because increasingly talking to people in industry, I realized that there's so many different pathways into the life science sector, and that students are really very unaware of that. And I myself trained as a historian, not as a scientist, and I've come into the area not with a scientific training. And it seems to me there's so many different opportunities for students to get involved in, if only their eyes could be opened about the range of opportunities. And as a result of this initiative, I've begun talking to people who came into industry at the age of 16 and did apprenticeships, or were accountants and then came into industry in a different way. Or I've been talking to people who did humanities and have found the fact that that's helped them in terms of helping build brands and marketing and stuff. So it just seemed to me to open the eyes of students to see that there's a huge range of opportunities. The other thing that struck me in launching this initiative is the real difficulty in schools connecting with industry, and that companies are not reaching out to the schools to connect with the students. And it seems to me we need to start building activities where companies go into schools to talk to the students, to give them ideas about what it's like to work in the industry, and that the industry has such a wide range, all the way from developing scientific reagents to also then thinking about data science, to developing laboratory equipment, to then developing drugs. I mean, developing drugs hinges on so many different skills, but students have no idea about that. And most kids who leave school are either thinking, well, I can't go into medicine, I don't have a scientific training, so the industry is not for me. And it seems to me we really need to start reframing that idea and get students to realize there's a huge opportunity here that they could get involved in. And also, it's a really hopeful industry that you're making an impact on people's lives. So that's where I've come from. And so we're launching our first event in April at a school to get companies to come and start talking to kids. They're thinking about how to break the ice with the students because they're not used to speaking to adults, and to get them engaged. So any ideas around that would be very helpful. We're also looking for sponsors and companies who are willing to support this initiative.
Well done. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Obviously, from my point of view, I can think back 10, maybe 12, maybe 15 years ago when the coverage at most universities and schools was actually really good from the industry. It's pretty much zero now. I work with the European Students Association. They have nothing from pharma and life sciences at all. So, you know, it's a poor state of affairs. Bhutto, I have a question from you, which has led from conversations I've had with a number of companies about bringing on apprenticeships into the organisation and the cost of that. And it's not necessarily just a cost. I mean, one of the organisations I was speaking to said that they're not actually taking any apprenticeships this year because it ended up being too expensive as far as project management time and management time is concerned. So I suppose really, what's your view on that? What is the cost of having an apprenticeship?
I think there is a cost to having an apprenticeship because what you're doing is you're building a pipeline of individuals. Now, recruitment itself at the moment costs money. If you're bringing in graduates into the workplace, you're bringing them in with a bio life science background, but they don't know anything about the role. That's why there's a requirement to do 2 years in industry. There is a real training cost need either way. I think the apprenticeship is basically fusing those two aspects together. So I don't think there is a real cost. It's no different to the cost that currently you'll be paying. When you bring in a new graduate, what do you end up doing? Training them, supporting them. they're not as fully utilized when they arrive because they've got to learn the job. They might have a broad understanding of the subject. The apprenticeship, yes, you are paying them a salary early on, but actually they're learning the job, gaining the experience both at the same time. So I think that the costs are a bit of a misnomer.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of really weird feedback on this one, especially when you look at the amount of levy it wasn't used this year, which was dire, to say the very least.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, there's millions in levy that weren't used by even the NHS. But I think it's what you've got to think is, okay, it's a no-brainer in the sense that students don't end up with debts. They want to end up in the sector. If it was my son or daughter going in, I'd go, hold on, you get to go to university for 3 to 4 years, you pick up experience, and you don't walk out there without any debt. It's an easy choice in that respect. Also for the industry, if you're looking at picking up the best talent before they've qualified, then it's better to get them into the sector at 18 than trying to pick them up at 21. Because I know from my experience as an academic, when big companies come around for the milk rounds, most of my students, and I'm an economist by background, they used to go and work for anything from the banks to engineering companies, you name it, not necessarily what they trained in. So if you're going to pick up good quality candidates and not compete against every other industry, you might as well get them early on. So it's an earlier version of the milk round.
Yeah. No, good point. Good point. Okay, well, for the sake of time, I'm going to have to move on very quickly. So moving over to Michelle, very interesting about a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago before we set this meeting up. So the question I have for you is, how does widening participation for new starters and existing staff align with WHH's commitment to social responsibility, particularly as an anchor institute? It's very keen for you to share that with this group.
Thank you very much. So Warrington and Halton's recruits predominantly from the population that live in our locality. So we are one of the biggest employers in Warrington and Halton, and our workforce is just around 4,700 employees. There's a full range, as you would expect, in any acute provider, and we have clinical trials units, we have our pharmacy departments, and we have a range of different banded staff, clinical and non-clinical roles within those. So the offer that we make as an employer has to meet both the professional demands from each of those particular professional groups, but also our more either back office functions or our clinical support functions, etc. As an employer in Warrington and Halton, we have developed really robust, strong relationships with our university sector and our adult education sector, our further education providers. And as part of that, that means that we have developed pipelines into our organisation to support people to come along and do work experience, to come along and have a look at different types of placements within the organisation. And we've embraced the apprenticeships for a whole range of different programmes. So, for example, at this moment, we have 36 of our employees doing a level 7 qualification. We have 18 doing a level 2. And between there, in totality, we have 190 of our workforce currently doing apprenticeships. We take widening participation in our organisation really seriously because we believe that we have a social responsibility for the population that uses our services. Our staff at some point may become our service users. So it's really important to us that we are rooted in the community and that we're providing a really robust career opportunity for those who want to come in. We do offer our clinical staff roles. Most of our posts would be substantively offered. So we don't take people on fixed term contracts or learning contracts. They come in and we manage them and support them through the qualifications with whichever provider it is that we're working with. And in the event that they're not able to complete that, there may be a capability related issue, or they may decide that that isn't the career for them. We have one-to-one conversations with those, and they're supported through our workforce widening participation managers. So we've invested in someone to support our learners in the workplace. I think the biggest thing that we've had to do is to educate our workforce, our managers, that apprenticeships aren't just for those that are coming into the profession and right out of the door. So we do use our apprenticeships for all sorts of qualifications, and we support the development of our workforce, both whether they're coming into the to the organisation for the first time or as part of their continuous professional development. And that's been our biggest challenge, getting our managers to understand that the term apprentice has modernised, has developed, and is something that's a fantastic asset and opportunity for them to really grow their workforce and to invest in them. Thank you.
No, lovely. Thanks, Michelle. We know there are problems with management in all sorts of industries at the moment, you know, managing their new workforce that they've never had to manage before. So it's one of those things. For the sake of time, I'm going to ask you just one more question. So Sue, just very quickly, what else can we do as an industry to resolve some of these issues? Because I know that we've talked about this a number of times. What do you think? If you had to put 5 things on the table, what would it be?
Look for solutions.
Yes.
Does that count as one? I think that working together in collaboration, looking for different ways. One of the things we keep talking about is having to have a change in mindset of the people involved, thinking of a different way of working, different approaches. And I think you can only do that through collaboration. The other thing is, if you're asking someone to change their mindset, it's very difficult to change your mindset if there's nothing else to replace what we're currently doing. How can you ask someone to move away from what you're currently doing without having something in mind? I think if we can come up with some sort of solution or range of solutions, then it is easier to try and affect changes of mindset. I think also we're working with ACRP in America, and they are trying to look for, they starting with a survey, much like everyone else, but they are trying to look at it from a different angle. Instead of looking for clinical research people looking at clinical research issues, they're looking from a more economical sort of background and looking from physician burnout. They're looking at different tools, and they're sort of saying that maybe we're not achieving as much with our surveys as we like because we're not asking the right questions. So we need to develop the right questions in order to get to the root cause of the problem. And I think that's not, maybe not 5, but I think that's enough for now. But basically, we need to find solutions.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Sue. Really appreciate that one. Alex, just one for you, really. Just jumping to the end, really. How will it be possible to resolve recruitment problems in the pharma industry, do you think? What can we do? What can we do that's different?
I think one of the big ideas that's coming out, we need to have more visibility in our professions. So everybody knows what a medical professional is. Nobody knows what a research, clinical research professional is. And I think what we would like to do is to create that status, so people know that these career path appears, are visible, and are interesting people. So we need to be honest. I mean, we're doing one of the most fantastic jobs on earth. I mean, we are saving lives. We're working in international settings. There is no Me Too problem in clinical research because 80% of the workforce is women. So my boss is a woman. So, and we make good money, good living out of that. And I mean, every day when I wake up, I want to work and I love my job. So how is it possible that that jobs are absolutely fantastic are not being known of? So I think really it's about advertising, making us more known, and probably educating people from the beginning. I do agree that the lack of scientific education in schools is problematic. And when we read some stuff on internet, I think it's a bit frightening. So it's creating awareness, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Which leads me nicely on to Lara, really. So, Lara, how do you think the biomedical industry can help support teachers to encourage students to pursue a career in the area? We've talked about this before, and I was really interested in what you said, because I think you're absolutely right. We've got to start younger. So, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's really struck me is that teachers are overloaded, and also they tend to be focusing on teaching the basics of science and are not really telling the students about the recent events and developments to get the students excited about what they can participate in. And it seems to me that part of my initiative is not just to reach out to the students, but to get the science teachers to come along and meet the companies so they can have contact with what's actually happening in the industry. And they are key to then inspiring the students to consider a career in this area. And it seems to me there's a huge gap in knowledge of the science teachers. One of the things that really struck me when I was advertising the event we're planning in Oxford is how few teachers knew what biotechnology actually means. So I then had to produce a video to explain what it is and what biotechnologists might be involved in and the kinds of things, how it affects our daily lives. So just getting that awareness, I think, across the teachers is really, really important and can help then get the students interested and then think about a career in this place.
Okay, I think that's great feedback. I mean, I think, Sue, just throwing this one back at you for a moment. I remember some years ago, just for clinical research alone, the Institute put together at least 50 pamphlets, and there was about 40 or 50 books aligning to any single area. I mean, you just don't see that anymore, do you?
No, you don't. And we used to run a course, so you want to be a CRA, and we used to get where the people that were interested in becoming a CRA came along and met the recruiters and the people and the companies that could employ them. But we don't see anything quite like that.
No, it's a shame, really. Okay, Bhuta, over to you, really. Question that just following on from the last one: what can an apprentice do or not do in their work role to actually improve things? I mean, what have you guys done? Because you know, some of the things we talked about before, so you've really got it nailed what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we've got thousands of apprentices at the NHS nationally. I mean, it's healthcare science I look after, and they're everything from immunology to bioinformatics. And the truth is, an apprentice is doing a job. They are learning while they're doing, but they're actually productively doing activity. And the thing with the apprenticeship structure is it's not designed around curriculum learning. So you learn a scientific technique. You actually have to apply it, so they have to do things. So it's anything that's appropriate to the role the employer sets. So if the employer says you're going to be working as a clinical researcher, if it says you have to manage a master file, forgive me because I'm not a clinical research person, but they have to do it. If they have to book patients in, they have to book patients in. They have to do the activity. What it does, it forces organizations to go, well, actually they don't really do leadership, but actually that's an important part of the structure. So they have to present opportunities for them to take some leadership work on. They have to do some statistics because it's already built into the structure. An apprentice can do as much as any other employee and more, because one of the big things with a lot of apprenticeship standards, often the final assessments involve them producing an improvement plan for their individual company. So a lot of companies actually benefit because they get this free kind of opportunity to going, okay, you're being supervised at university or within your institution. Can you come up with an improvement plan? And that benefits the organization.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Simple, but really effective, obviously. Michelle, moving on to you very quickly. There's lots we could ask you, but I think I'll just really finish on the one question. What could assist WHS to do even better? What do you think could make things even better for you guys?
So I think one of the things that we do struggle with the apprenticeship levy is backfill and supporting individuals to be released. The expectation is that it's a minimum of a 10% support to the individual. That doesn't mean 10% out of the service, and I'm not for a second saying that. But I think that any reduction in a challenged and busy service does have an impact. So the ability to utilise and create opportunities for backfill, I think would be a real step in the right direction, and that's bigger than Warrington. And I think one of the other things as well is about how we work collaboratively. So we use some of our levy to support those that don't have access to the levy in our place. So we utilise it with some of our hospices, and we use it with some of our charitable organisations locally who are providing a service to our organisation. And so I think there is something around how we collaborate much more around the levy so that it's not wasted. And that's the biggest thing, the biggest lesson that I think I can take away from this is listening to all of the range of opportunities for people to use different ways of getting people in. But once you've got them there and you've made a commitment, how do you use that resource as effectively as you can? Not the person, the funding. We will utilise the individual, if we want to refer to them as a resource, in the most appropriate way, because we're investing in them for the future.
Yeah. Lovely, thanks for that. Okay, well, because of time, we're going to end it here. So, Simon, any questions coming in from the audience so far?
Yeah, we do. We have one that's further up here, which is regarding lack of research candidates that are retiring. Do you think that there's opportunities to keep current resources by changing to part-time contracts, then using them to train the inexperienced resources, so to speak? Also, they wanted to say, Lara, they really agree with you on the point you made about school awareness. Very much needed.
Okay, so who would like to answer that question?
Can I just say I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because it's fulfilling both perspectives. Those that are retiring are still getting involved, and then it's bringing on new people and giving them good experience. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Well done, Joanne, you solved it.
Yeah, there you go, Joanne.
Well done.
Booter, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the NHS has retire and return as an option. That way we're not losing fundamental important skills. That allows somebody to retire and then return in a different capacity. Also, really good long-term succession planning, around, we know that this person may retire in the next few years. How are we going to plan to bring somebody up in line for when they eventually make that choice? Because that's the truth. Everybody's going to retire at some point. I mean, it might be at a later stage, but actually having that forethought, and it's surprising how many organizations kind of go, oh, we've just realized about 5 of our people are retired. How are we going to replace the skills? That shouldn't be a question at the end. That should be a question 4 or 5 years ahead of that process.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Laura, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, basically, I also wanted to say that one of the challenges I found with schools is that a lot of students want to take the opportunity of work experience but can't actually get there. And in terms of state-funded schools, this is a real problem, that there's a lack of transport. It's easier for kids in private schools to get mum and dad to drive them to where they need to be. But kids in state-sponsored state schools can't have that facility. So we need to be thinking about putting funds in to enable students to take that work experience and avail of it, basically. And I think the more we can go into schools and support the students to get that work experience and also to get internships is important. And finally, I also want to talk about mentorships, because we thought about doing mentorships, but kids are really stuck in terms of the time that they've got to do those studies and then devote it to working with a mentor. So we need to think about how we can provide mentorship without impinging on their already very busy schedules.
Oh, good. Okay. Simon, anything else?
Yeah, there's just a lot of agreement in the comment section. People are saying, that they're struggling to find internships and jobs. They recently graduated, they've had to move to other countries, and yeah, struggling to get that 2 years experience. Yeah,
I know, it's a crazy one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else?
That's all of the questions from the chat, actually.
We'll bring it to a close there because we are overrunning. I just want to say thank you very much to all of our participants in today's session. I think it's been really interesting. I think we probably needed 2 hours rather than half an hour for this one, but that's a different thing altogether. Mentoring is something that we are looking at in one of our next webinars that we're going to be doing. I think it's really important. I think we're missing out on a lot of resource, a lot of really good people, not only for middle-aged people or young people, but also for executives. I think, you know, there's huge issues there where they need to be mentored as people move out of their positions. So it's something that we'll cover next time. And I hope you've all enjoyed the session. It's recorded, as Simon's already mentioned, so we can let you have that afterwards. And once again, just to thank all of the participants. It's been great and really good questions. Simon, do you want to finish off?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you everyone for coming. Again, if you want a copy of the recording, send it to sales@PharmiWeb.com and we'll be happy to follow up. All of you will receive emails in the coming days asking what you thought, asking for your input. And if you do need anything from any of our panelists at all, let me know. Again, sales@PharmiWeb.com and I can get you connected so you can continue the conversation. Thanks everyone for coming today. Really appreciate it. And thank you again to our panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.